August 23rd, 2014. My name is Brian Cox. I'm doing this video to put my 2 cents worth into this since no one else wants to listen to me. I'm not making false reports. I have the facts. I have the evidence right here. All of it. What it is since we moved here in 2009, and for the first 4 months, after realizing that the house was full of fraud and forgery, and settling with the real estate agents and the title company, I left the option open to go and file complaints with the Financial Institutions Division, the Title Insurance Division, and the Construction Industries Division about this house. In March, April of 2010, I went outside and touched my fence that was on my property, and the neighbor had a problem with that. Since that time, there was nothing but problems. And it started off with anything I did, he would sit there and call the police, and they would show up and they would side with him. Well, one day I told the police and him that if they do it again, I'm going to file harassment charges. I went down to the city, had a talk with some of the people down there, one being Mary Lucy Baca. Wanted a meeting with some people, including the chief of police, which we did. His name was Mike Chavez, no relation to this upcoming complaint here, or this story. Told him that what was going on, and I just wanted some peace. We moved here 2 years prior. I had wound up in emergency day after Christmas 2007, in which I had diverticulitis and pancreatitis. Shortly after that, we started doing some tests, and I had some thyroid issues. Well, all around about what has happened is over the years, since 2010, is basically I've been diagnosed incorrectly. I was on some medication that had me all over the place. Thank God I'm smart enough to realize that what was going on was not right. During this same time, we move into this house. I'm having to deal with the drugs. I'm having to deal with the house. My medical issues are just going crazy. Then I'm dealing with the neighbor. And then the police get involved. The city is involved. It got to the point where I wound up, and a week after the meeting with the chief of police and the neighbors, having a little peace meeting, the chief was gone. A week or two later, I think. I don't know. With that, any agreement that was made that there was peace was gone too. Shortly after that, I began walking my dogs. Well, I had been walking my dogs along the ditch bank here with no problems. All of a sudden, in August 2011, these folks had these dogs, and they moved them up against their fence, which they got up underneath the fence and was attacking me and my dogs. With my feet condition and my ankle at the same time, I couldn't run. I still can't run. I have been bit by dogs, but that doesn't seem to bother people around here. From that point on, actually 2 days into that, there was 4 days of straight complaints about it to the city, or to the 911 I made. A couple of days into it, I went down to talk with the chief of police, Chief Rob, and the animal control officer, and wound up having an anxiety attack. Never had one before, didn't know what it was. They suggested I go to emergency room. Thought I was having a heart attack or signs of one. No. Next day I'm walking my dogs, the same thing. I get attacked, or the dog comes out from under the fence. I call 911. I even asked on 911 to send county out, because the city, the 3 previous days, sent out a animal control officer, or a security officer in a police car. And then the second day sent out a police officer and an animal control officer. Warned the people. I went and had a talk with the chief that day. That's when I had the anxiety attack. The following day, Wednesday, August the 11th, I'm walking out and walking my dogs, and I have another anxiety attack going on. The fire chief was there because of some other issue with a fire hydrant at the same location, the police officer and an animal control officer. I wound up on the ground having this anxiety attack, not knowing what was going on. All I know is I couldn't breathe. Next thing I know, the fire chief pulls up in his truck. He asked me if I need some help. First I said no, then I said yes. He asked me why, and I told him the same reason I was in the police station yesterday. I didn't know what was going on. A white car pulls up next to the chief, talks to him, and they both take off. Leave me laying there. Do you think I have animosity to the city? You betcha I do. It got worse from there. A lot worse. It got to the extent of this story right here. We buried my father-in-law. We came here to help him, because he was getting ready to go on dialysis. That was 2006. We moved into this house in 2009. We were in Albuquerque. No problems there. As soon as I move in here, it's been a nightmare. But anyway, he passed away in September 2012. October 3rd, we buried him. October 4th, I started getting these phone calls on my cell phone, which they were blocked numbers. I didn't think anything of it, you know. A couple of calls come straight in right away. I answer. No one says anything. I hang up. Then all of a sudden the calls keep coming back. Probably 10 to 12 of them. That was the first day. That was on October 4th, 2012. Okay. So I then saw that the number kept coming back. I just kept rejecting it. Constant. This went on for 5 days. The 4th, the 5th, the 6th, the 7th, and the 8th. On the 9th, I believe it was, I wound up talking to the person. He called me. We spoke for probably 5 minutes when I was at the post office. I went over to the McDonald's, got me some hamburgers because I was on my way to my chiropractor, or my acupuncturist. I stopped and ate. He calls back again. I let it sit there. When I'm done, I finish. I pick up the phone. We started chatting a little bit. Told him I was going to turn him into the police. He laughed. Told me he had a blocked phone number. I couldn't find out who he was. Okay. The challenge. That night I went home, because I know by law, federal law, all 800 numbers have to generate a phone number that's being called to it. I found a company that set me up, and I have all the documents right here, in which any calls that I would forward from my cell phone to that number, 800 number, it would generate the number that was dialed to my number, even though it was a blocked number. I also got an email with the phone number and even a message, if there was one. Okay, so I set that up. I checked it out that night. Next day I went and I was subpoenaed as a witness for a case in the local municipal court. I get over there and Joseph Chavez is there. Now, Joseph Chavez and I have had some issues throughout the 2.5 years, and I've noticed that through his reports and it's a pattern, dead set pattern, that his dislike towards me is very obvious. He's also got these reports so that they're all one-sided, all against me, and the intensity of what I did, or really didn't do, but he made it look like I did, has increased. Now, like I said, I have a timeline of events of everything that's happened since we moved in here. I'll go do that on another video. Right now I'm focused on this one right here, this phone harassment. So, I go home after the court date, after that courtroom. I come home a few minutes later, about 15-20 minutes later, I start getting these calls from this blocked number. I forward them to the email, to the voicemail. A few minutes later I get a voicemail back, or emails back with the phone numbers. I found out where it was registered out of, but it didn't give me a name unless I paid $5. I thought, well, I'll just turn it into the police and let them get it. My mistake. So I took the number, I called the Gallup Police Department, told them what was going on. They told me to call my local police department. Okay. I took and called that number a couple of times and told them on there that basically you thought I couldn't get your number because you had a blocked number. You thought, and I said that I don't play games, and I don't. So I document everything. Now I take and the information the next day to the police department. It was the same day that some kids did some threats at some high school, intermediate school or something, I don't know. But that was the day it happened. I went and brought my documents into the police station and gave it to Chief Rob in Berlin. The first thing he says is, well, it's interesting that you walk in because I got something to talk to you about. Okay. So I come in with my documents, I told him what's going on, I laid them down, I showed him, he looks over at he rolls over to a computer, he looks at it, he comes back, and then he tells me the story about one of his officers said that I had called him and left some messages on there. I was like, really? The only person that I called that day was the person that had called me with the voicemail that showed as a blocked number on my phone, and I got the voicemail with the phone number. That's the only person I've called. He says that he had gotten these phone calls, talked to the lieutenant, and changed his phone number. Well, see, that's interesting because I have the documents right here that shows that timeline where I got those phone calls, when I got them, when I got the email, and when I made those calls to apparently Officer Joseph Chavez's phone. Well, if he was off work that day, more than likely he had his phone on him. He didn't leave it at home for his little brother or brother to make those phone calls, as his brother has stated. That's total false. And I'll say it to anyone. That's a blatant lie. So, the chief wasn't in. I go in later on that day and I bring him this stuff, and we're both stumped. And he asked me to leave the stuff with him. I said sure, because I had copies. It was easy. I came home, we talked it over with my wife. She was furious. Wanted an investigation. So I turned around and wanted an investigation. I emailed the chief, and I also emailed the council members and the mayor and the city manager. I demanded that a subpoena be done and have records of both my number and that phone number of Joseph Chavez's pulled. That was never done. It still has not been done to this day. So, the chief tells me that I need to go and get a third-party investigation. Okay? They'll do their own. I go get another one. I go to the state police up in Albuquerque. They tell me, they call the lieutenant that's in charge of Valencia County, and he refused to do an investigation. He told that to the chief of police here in Belen as well. I was like, okay, that's wrong. That's very wrong. I got Chief, what's his name's phone number? I got it. The previous chief, not Pete Casillas or whatever his name is. Schilling, Chief Schilling. Called him up and told him I was on my way to the FBI office to drop off the documents. That was wrong for your police officers to refuse an investigation like that. He agreed. He had told me that he'd have an officer come down and pick up my documents, copy of my documents. That's fine. I took the rest of it to the FBI. I took all of it to the FBI. The FBI has it here in Albuquerque. The only thing that's missing is the subpoenas for both my phone records and Joseph Chavez's phone records. And I say that because I do not believe he allowed his brother to use this phone. I believe he uses that phone probably for personal, but he may use it for police purpose on duty. Okay? When did he make those phone calls? Why was my phone number, as it states on the state police report, why was my phone number even programmed into his phone where Michael says he called me? Because it was in Joseph's phone. Why is my phone number in there? There's no reason for him to be calling me. I have never called him, never wanted to, and still don't. All I want is an apology. I want to know why he did what they did. So, state police come out, grab my stuff, said they're going to do an investigation. That was in October. October 17th to be exact. Never heard anything from anybody. After the false incident report made by the Belen Police Department on January 29th of 2013 of an incident that happened in my house where guys came, bail bondsmen in fact, came to my house because he left his dog running loose and got a ticket for it, and came over here and made threats to me with his daddy or daddy-in-law, I don't know who it is, I don't care, with a gun. My wife calls 911. You can hear everything on 911. These guys are coming to my house. I'm at my property. They're making threats to me. I go pick up this report, and it's got me as a suspect. And if you saw the lies on there, you would not believe it. Now, you take this report, you take my wife calling 911, you call me, say, have me on the 911 call, because I did call them to tell them to get a real cop out here. When Luis Lopez, another incident with Belen cops, that says that I had no medical problem, and then charges me with disorderly conduct. Another incident we'll get into. So, I find out that the state police closed the investigation on this phone harassment. Found that there was no wrongdoing. How can you close a case, number one, when there is wrongdoing, blatant? You don't even pull subpoenas or records on phone numbers. You look at the limited one that I had of mine, that's it. And you look at my emails from the voicemail system, which if you'll see, I also have, and I have it here, two of them that went into my voicemail system that was actually from Chief Rob. One of them lasted for about 9 minutes, if I remember right. It was one of those accidental butt dial things where somebody lays it down or accidentally calls you and you can hear everything going on. I heard his TV going on, the conversation. Yeah. So, I get upset. I call the Internal Affairs for the State of Police of New Mexico. I left a message. Never talked to anyone. I left a message. Next thing I know, I get a call from a lieutenant, a different lieutenant in Valencia County, stating that he's going to reopen the case. Okay. He takes off to Phoenix. He comes back. He's gone. He goes somewhere else, Gallup or France or somewhere. I don't know where. So they're waiting for another third lieutenant here in Valencia County. In the meantime, I'm trying to get in contact with Robert Correjo. He does not want to talk to me. I'm trying to get a hold of him to give him some new evidence before the court date, or because I knew that they were opening up the case again. Well, then the next thing I know, they closed the case. And it happened in January, March, April 15th. And basically said that they got a Michael Chavez that said that he made the phone calls on his vacation time. Which, like I stated before, if Michael was on vacation and made a call that Wednesday, or that day that he made that call, Tuesday or Wednesday, he made that call after the court, and Joseph Chavez was off that day and was at the courtroom. He knew I was home within about 15 minutes because he was still there. He was off duty. It's kind of hard to believe that Michael would have Joseph's phone making prank phone calls. But that's what they came up with. Now, I'm just showing you the facts. You figure it out from there. Then I find this out. So I call Internal Affairs again, and this time I actually spoke with Major Weaver. We've spoken, I think, 3 times about this whole thing. Well, basically they reopened the case again on January, February, March, April, May the 2nd of 2013, in which Robert Correjo calls Michael on the telephone for a face-to-face, and Michael refuses and told him that he's going to be charged with a criminal complaint for phone harassment. Well, Michael then dummied up and wouldn't talk. Okay, so now we have a court date. We show up at the courtroom. I was not even subpoenaed as being the victim in this. What kills me is Robert Correjo, Officer Robert Correjo, is now acting as a prosecuting attorney. Well, he's not trained as an attorney. He's representing a case that has a harassment involved with a victim. The victim was not even subpoenaed to court to testify or be a witness, in which police are usually witnesses in cases. They don't prosecute cases. So if that's the way the law is here, that's screwed up. Very screwed up. Because you cannot get a fair case any way you go. Period. So, the case starts in the courtroom in front of Danny Hawks. 5 minutes into it almost, this attorney, Joshua Sanchez, speaks up and stops the court. Well, that shouldn't have been allowed. And then now he steps in and wants to be a representative of Michael Chavez, which is standing there with no attorney. He had plenty of time to have an attorney. I can speculate why he didn't have an attorney, being the brother of a Belen police officer, Danny Hawks being an ex-Belen police officer, 15 years or maybe 14 years at the time as magistrate judge. Who's going to get a fair trial in this town? No one. Go back and look at his courts. I bet there's all kinds of complaints. I had two. I filed them with the New Mexico Judicial Commission, with the Supreme Court of New Mexico. Right after I got out of my surgery in October of 2013, I found out that Danny Hawks was retiring. Coincidence? Facts. So, Joshua stops the court, gets a rescheduled date. We're walking out, me and Officer Robert Correjo turns to me and says, "Why don't I just drop it and leave my business alone? Leave this business alone." Well, let me tell you what. With all of my rights that have been violated since I've been here, and I'll go through it in the timeline of events, including the city not allowing me to go to any building, public building, without calling them first. That's a violation of my rights and your rights. Now, you want to play games? We can play games. This ain't a game. Now, the court date is in, I can't remember, September or October. No, it was, I think, initially in September. And then it was changed to October. After I had to go in and request that Danny Hawks recuse himself, since he's recused himself on 2 other cases, which included me, which we'll go through on timeline of events. And now he won't take himself off this case. Awful strange as well. After my second complaint to the New Mexico Judicial Commission, he so happened to recuse himself. Tina Garcia took the case. It was scheduled October 4th, 8 o'clock in the morning, I believe, or 9 o'clock. Same day I had surgery scheduled since back in August. I wrote her a letter and brought a packet of all the information and of all the evidence. I took it to the courtroom, to the courthouse myself in Los Lunas, and explained my situation. And on October 4th I was having surgery. I had a foot of colon taken out. 9 days later I had a heart attack. After that I thought I was feeling great. I took one of 4 sets of the evidence I have against this city,